Commander Sarah Chen grimaced as another tremor shook the bridge of the UES Pathfinder. Warning lights cascaded across multiple stations, and the acrid smell of melted circuitry filled the air despite the environmental filters working overtime. "Damage report," she ordered, her voice steady despite the chaos. Lieutenant Rodriguez at tactical wiped blood from a cut above his eye. "Direct hits to our port shield generator and secondary propulsion. Engineering reports containment holding at 70%. No casualties, but we have 9 injured crew members." Chen studied the tactical display where the crystalline Kelsari vessels maintained formation, weapons charged for another volley. Their design was beautiful in its geometric precision, facetted hulls that reflected the starlight like enormous diamonds. Ironic that something so lovely could be so deadly. "They misinterpreted our greeting," Communications Officer Park said, looking up from her console with disbelief. "Our linguistic analysis shows their translation matrix converted our peace message into a territorial claim. It's a contextual error in their language processing." Chen considered her options carefully. The Pathfinder carried significant defensive capabilities, enough to return fire and potentially disable at least 2 of the smaller Kelsari vessels. Earth's first contact protocol was clear, however. Demonstrate peaceful intentions wherever possible, even when threatened. Navigation. Plot a withdrawal course that keeps our damaged section away from their targeting sensors, Chen ordered. Tactical. Maintain passive defensive measures only. No counterfire. Her executive officer, Commander Ibarra, moved closer and lowered his voice. "Captain, with respect, we could show them we're not defenseless without escalating to lethal force." Chen shook her head slightly. "If we demonstrate weapons capabilities now, we establish a relationship based on mutual threat assessment. I want their first impression of humanity to be more nuanced than that." As the Pathfinder executed a precise withdrawal maneuver, Chen authorized a different kind of response. "Lieutenant Park, prepare a comprehensive data package. Include cultural information, historical first contact protocols, mathematical sequences demonstrating scientific advancement, and artistic representations, music, poetry, images of Earth's natural beauty. Add our sensor readings of their fleet composition and weapons signatures," Chen continued. "I want them to understand we've analyzed their capabilities but chose restraint." The bridge crew worked efficiently despite the damage around them. Through the view screen, they watched as the Kelsari vessels maintained pursuit formation but held their fire, seemingly confused by the disciplined retreat. "Package ready for transmission," Park announced. "Send it across all frequencies and include this message," Chen said, standing straighter despite the pain from a bruised shoulder. "To the Kelsari Confederation. We understand now that our greeting was misinterpreted. Cultural misunderstandings between species are expected during first contact. We harbor no ill intentions toward your people. We're withdrawing from your territory, but will maintain position at coordinates attached to this message for the next 14 standard days, should you wish to establish proper communication. We offered friendship. Remember this choice." As the message transmitted, Chen made one more decision. Science Officer Mbik, deploy 2 observational probes with passive cloaking. Program them to maintain position at the edge of Kelsari space and transmit data back to Earth Command. The Pathfinder's engines hummed with increasing power as it prepared for faster-than-light travel. On the view screen, the Kelsari vessels seemed to hesitate, their formation shifting slightly as if in confusion. "They're scanning us more intensively," Rodriguez reported, "getting complete readings of our hull composition, power systems, and crew complement." Chen nodded. "Let them look. Transparency can be its own kind of strength." As the stars stretched into lines around them, Chen recorded her final log entry before the jump. First contact with the Kelsari Confederation has concluded with hostilities due to translation error. I've chosen a measured withdrawal rather than escalation. The Pathfinder has sustained moderate damage but remains fully operational. I'm recommending Earth Command initiate Protocol Lighthouse, not as preparation for conflict, but to ensure we understand the Kelsari completely before our next encounter. Sometimes, the greatest victory is the battle never fought. The Pathfinder disappeared into the darkness between stars, leaving behind only its message and the invisible observers that would begin humanity's most comprehensive study of an alien civilization. Knowledge that would prove far more valuable than any weapon when they returned. Admiral Kamari's holographic presentation faded, leaving the converted asteroid facility's war room in contemplative silence. The reinforced walls, carved from the asteroid's natural iron-nickel composition and lined with quantum-dampening fields, ensured their deliberations remained private, even from the increasingly sophisticated Kelsari long-range sensors. General Zhang broke the silence, his weathered face illuminated by the tactical display showing the 7 Earth government representatives. Our intelligence networks confirm the Kelsari have already forgotten us. Their military reports classify the Pathfinder incident as minor border enforcement against primitive explorers. Their arrogance is our advantage, said Director Reyes of Earth Intelligence, manipulating the holographic controls to display intercepted Kelsari communication patterns. They've expanded into 2 additional systems since our encounter, displacing the indigenous Forelli in the process. The pattern is consistent. They underestimate, overwhelm, and assimilate. Admiral Kamari, her dark eyes reflecting the star maps, nodded, which is precisely why Project Lighthouse must proceed differently than our previous encounter protocols. The Kelsari understand only dominance hierarchies. If we approach as supplicants or equals, they'll interpret it as weakness. The asteroid's environmental systems hummed softly in the background as the representatives considered their options. Outside the facility's few reinforced viewports, the purple-tinged nebula provided both concealment and a stunning backdrop, a reminder of what humanity fought to protect. "What exactly are you proposing?" asked Premier Okada, her voice carrying the authority of the Pacific Alliance's 37 member nations. Admiral Kamari's fingers danced across the control surface, bringing up schematics for a vessel unlike anything Earth had previously constructed. Not a traditional show of force, Premier. Something more. Illuminating. The hologram revealed a ship whose design principles defied conventional military architecture. Instead of the expected weapons arrays and shield generators, the schematic highlighted adaptive hull materials, reconfigurable internal systems, and communication arrays of unprecedented sophistication. "I present the UES consequence," Kamari continued. "A vessel designed not primarily to fight, but to understand, adapt, and demonstrate. Its hull contains nanomaterial composites that can reconfigure to absorb, deflect, or redirect energy based on real-time analysis. Its sensor suite can process information at quantum speeds, allowing it to predict attack patterns before weapons even fire." Director Santos of the South American Confederation leaned forward skeptically. "You want to respond to an attack with a glorified research vessel?" General Zhang smiled slightly. The ancient strategist Sun Tzu wrote that supreme excellence consists in breaking the enemy's resistance without fighting. The consequence doesn't need overwhelming firepower. It needs to demonstrate something the Kelsari have never encountered: the human capacity for observation, adaptation, and precise response. The room's atmosphere shifted as understanding dawned. This wasn't a conventional military proposal, but something uniquely human, drawing on centuries of philosophical, psychological, and technological development. The Kelsari believe technology alone determines species hierarchy, Admiral Kamari explained. "We'll show them something their rigid thinking can't comprehend. Technology guided by ethical frameworks, adaptive rather than merely destructive." She expanded the hologram to reveal smaller companion vessels and what appeared to be thousands of microscopic drones. "While the consequence commands their attention, these will be our true eyes and hands, infiltrating Kelsari systems, gathering intelligence, and, if necessary, executing precision interventions." The representatives exchanged glances, centuries of human conflict and diplomacy informing their evaluation. This approach honored hard-learned lessons from humanity's own bloody history. That true victory comes not from destruction, but from changing how your opponent thinks. There's something else, Kamari said, her voice quieter now. We've received transmissions from 3 species previously subjugated by the Kelsari. They've been watching, waiting to see how we respond. Our actions now won't just determine human-Kelsari relations. They'll establish our reputation throughout this sector. Premier Okada nodded decisively. How long until the consequence is operational? 6 months for construction, another 3 for crew training, General Zhang replied. Meanwhile, we deploy observer probes and begin cultural analysis. When we return to Kelsari space, we'll understand them better than they understand themselves. Admiral Kamari closed the presentation with a final image, the planned diplomatic vessel that would accompany the consequence. Its design incorporated subtle elements of Kelsari architectural aesthetics alongside recognizable human features. They fired on us out of fear and arrogance, she concluded. When we return, they'll learn that humanity's greatest weapon has always been our capacity to understand our adversaries, and then to surprise them with something they never anticipated, the offer of genuine partnership despite past transgressions. As the meeting adjourned, the representatives departed with a shared understanding. Project Lighthouse would illuminate the darkness between stars not with destruction, but with something far more powerful, the uniquely human gift for turning enemies into allies through understanding, adaptation, and strategic restraint. Botanical engineer Mexvala moved through the experimental greenhouse on Kelsar 9, her sensory appendages twitching with excitement as she examined the season's harvest. The crystalline structures of her exoskeleton caught the artificial sunlight, casting rainbow patterns across the research station's polished floors. The adaptive irrigation algorithms have exceeded all projections, she dictated to her assistant, Trenbor. Nutrient absorption has increased by 22%, and root structures show unprecedented resilience to soil salinity fluctuations. Trenbor's data manipulators clicked rapidly as he processed the information. Source attribution remains incomplete. Lead engineer. The algorithms appeared in the Scientific Exchange Network with credentials from the Agricultural Academy on Kelsar Prime, but they've denied authorship. Mexvala's primary eyes narrowed while her secondary visual sensors continued scanning the crop yields. Something about these improvements felt deliberately tailored to their specific colony world, accounting for atmospheric particulates unique to Kelsar 9's recent volcanic activity, compensating for soil composition variances that weren't even in the official planetary database. Cross-reference with other unexpected technological improvements throughout the Confederation, she instructed. Search for pattern similarities, coding structures, implementation methodologies. As Trenbor complied, Mexvala extracted a sample from a particularly robust grain stalk. Under normal circumstances, she would have celebrated such agricultural advancement. Food security had always been the Confederation's greatest vulnerability. But her scientific intuition, honed through 3 molting cycles of research, signaled something deliberate in these conveniently timed innovations. Across the colony, similar discussions occurred in research facilities, medical centers, and engineering complexes. The medical director at Central Treatment puzzled over new surgical techniques that reduced recovery time by 40%. The Planetary Defense Coordinator marveled at shield harmonics adjustments that improved efficiency while reducing power consumption. The educational administrator implemented teaching methodologies that somehow bridged the cognitive differences between Kelsari subspecies that had frustrated educators for generations. All innovations appeared independently, all untraceable beyond a certain point, all perfectly adapted to Kelsari physiology and needs. Aboard the Stellar Inquiry, science vessel first class of the Kelsari Confederation, Captain Dex Morrow ordered another scan of the unusual nebula formation. The gaseous cloud's spectral emissions defied standard classification, showing elements of both naturally occurring phenomena and what appeared to be controlled particle distribution. Increase sensor resolution by 30%, she ordered. There's something hiding within those radiation patterns. The science vessel's primary engines hummed as they maintained position at the nebula's edge. The stellar inquiry represented the Confederation's finest research capabilities. Its sensory arrays more sophisticated than many military vessels, its computational systems optimized for pattern recognition and anomaly detection. "Captain," called the sensor technician, mandibles clicking with confusion, "I'm detecting unusual gravitational microdistortions within the nebula. They appear to be moving against the particle flow." Before Captain Dex Mora could respond, every system on the bridge simultaneously powered down. Emergency illumination failed to activate. Gravitational stabilizers ceased functioning, leaving the crew floating in sudden, disorienting darkness. Through the bridge's observation dome, the nebula's gases parted like a curtain, revealing what at first appeared to be a moving section of space itself, a vessel of such proportions that it defied comprehension, its hull seeming to bend light around contours that the Kelsory visual cortex struggled to process. Instead of weapon ports or traditional propulsion systems, the massive ship bristled with sensor arrays and communication equipment of bewildering complexity. As it approached, thousands of small objects deployed from recessed bays, surrounding the stellar inquiry in a perfect sphere formation. The objects, each approximately the size of a Kelsory hand, began projecting images directly onto the science vessel's hull, visible to the crew through the observation dome. The projection showed scenes unfamiliar to the Kelsory. Blue oceans beneath white clouds, structures of stunning architectural variety, bipedal creatures gathering in groups both small and numbering thousands. Captain Dex Mora and her crew watched in stunned silence as the images shifted to show something they recognized immediately: their own military vessels firing upon a small exploration ship. The perspective shifted multiple times, showing the incident from angles that should have been impossible for anyone to record. The final projection displayed a mathematical equation that gradually transformed into Kelsory script. Observation precedes understanding. Understanding precedes judgment. You observed without understanding. We understand without judging. Yet, for 12 hours, the stellar inquiry remained suspended in space, all systems inactive except life support. The crew experienced something unprecedented in Kelsory space exploration: being studied rather than studying, observed rather than observing. When power finally returned, Captain Dex Mora found a small wooden carving on her command chair, an elegantly crafted representation of two hands meeting in what appeared to be a greeting gesture, one hand clearly Kelsory, the other alien but depicted with perfect anatomical understanding of Kelsory artistic conventions. Beneath it lay a handwritten note in flawless ceremonial Kelsory script, using idioms and calligraphic flourishes known only to those who had studied their ancient cultural texts. "We learn before we judge. Next time, perhaps you will too." The Grand Assembly Hall of the Kelsory Confederation fell into an uncharacteristic silence as Ambassador Eleanor Chen concluded her formal greeting. Her pronunciation of the ancient ceremonial dialect was flawless, including subtle harmonic undertones produced by specialized vocal implants that accommodated frequencies beyond normal human range. High Chancellor Zorbex's crystalline exoskeleton reflected the chamber's ceremonial lights as he responded, his translator appendages vibrating with carefully controlled emotion. "Your knowledge of our customs is unexpected, Ambassador Chen, as is your familiarity with our defensive capabilities." Eleanor smiled diplomatically, her movements deliberately measured to match Kelsory's social comfort thresholds. "Understanding precedes meaningful dialogue, Chancellor. We wish to meet as informed equals rather than strangers." The assembled Confederation representatives shifted uncomfortably, their mandibles clicking in the specific pattern that humans now recognized as indicating collective anxiety. The holographic displays Eleanor had activated remained suspended in the air. Detailed schematics of Kelsory military installations, power distribution networks, and command hierarchies. "You present this information not as threat, but as credential?" asked Science Director Nexvala, her sensory appendages extended in the gesture of academic inquiry. Precisely, Eleanor confirmed. Just as you would not send an uninformed representative to crucial negotiations, we wouldn't approach without comprehensive understanding. Knowledge demonstrates respect. Through the assembly hall's transparent ceiling dome, the enormous silhouette of the UES Consequence maintained its position in high orbit, a constant reminder of human technological capability that somehow managed to appear simultaneously threatening and restrained. Eleanor activated another holographic display, this one showing something that caused several Kelsari representatives to rise from their ceremonial pedestals in agitation. The wreckage of a Kelsari exploration vessel lost during the third expansion 2 centuries earlier. We recovered this vessel from the Cygnus Reach, Eleanor explained. Your historical records indicated its significance in your early exploration efforts. We've restored it and are prepared to return it along with the recovered personal effects of its crew. Military Overseer Vextal's voice cut through the murmurs. You violated sovereign territory to salvage our historical vessels. Eleanor's expression remained pleasant but firm. The vessel drifted into what you now recognize as neutral space. We undertook significant effort to preserve it according to Kelsari archaeological protocols, which we studied extensively. The cultural preservation team included archaeologists specialized in crystalline-based civilizations. She gestured to a human colleague who brought forward a small containment field holding what appeared to be a damaged personal recording device of ancient Kelsari design. This belonged to junior explorer Lex Murrin, according to the identification markers. Our linguists have partially reconstructed his final log entries. They reveal something your historical accounts omit, that the vessel was damaged not by navigation error, but by an automated defense system deployed by the previous inhabitants of the Cygnus system, a species your official records claim never developed spacefaring technology. The assembly erupted into clicking debates, with representatives turning to their data terminals to verify or dispute this revelation. Eleanor waited patiently, allowing the information to circulate. This calculated disclosure served multiple purposes, demonstrating human archaeological capability, revealing knowledge of Kelsari historical revisionism, and subtly highlighting the Confederation's pattern of minimizing other species' achievements. Chancellor Zorbex raised his primary appendages for silence. Ambassador Chen, your thoroughness is acknowledged. Yet I must question your purpose. If you possess such comprehensive understanding of our civilization, including our military capabilities, why approach diplomatically rather than continuing your covert observations? Eleanor's expression softened as she activated one final holographic display, this one showing the original human exploration vessel that the Kelsari had fired upon. The image zoomed in to show the vessel's insignia, a stylized earth surrounded by olive branches with the inscription, "To explore, to understand, to connect." Because observation without engagement creates knowledge without wisdom, Chancellor. Humanity's history taught us that technological capability without ethical framework leads to destruction. We could have responded to your attack with matched aggression. She gestured toward the UES Consequence visible through the dome. But that would have merely continued a cycle we've seen throughout our own development. Eleanor stepped closer to the Chancellor's pedestal, a gesture of trust that violated standard Kelsari security protocols. We come not to threaten, but to offer something we believe your civilization has forgotten during its military expansion, the recognition that true advancement comes not from domination, but from collaboration between different perspectives. From orbit, the UES Consequence adjusted its position slightly, angling its hull to catch the system's primary sun. The movement revealed, just briefly, elaborate hull markings that hadn't been visible before. Artistic renderings that combined Kelsari crystalline symmetry patterns with human geometric designs, creating something neither civilization would have conceived independently. The message was subtle but clear. Humans had not just studied Kelsari culture, they had found value in it, incorporated elements of it, respected it even while preparing for potential conflict. Admiral Tixviller's private quarters aboard the Kelsari defensive platform Eternal Vigilance offered a panoramic view of their homeworld's crystalline continents and luminescent oceans. Tonight, however, she kept the viewport shields closed as she reviewed the latest intelligence reports on human activities throughout Confederation space. A gentle chime announced her expected visitor. "Enter," she commanded, her voice activating the security protocols that would ensure their conversation remained unmonitored. War strategist Vos Tekmar's exoskeleton gleamed with the traditional polish of the military elite as he entered, his posture conveying the confidence that had made him the Confederation's most decorated tactician. "Admiral, your request for a private meeting is highly irregular." "These are irregular times, strategist," Tixviller replied, gesturing toward the data displays hovering above her workspace. "What do you see in these reports?" Vos Tekmar studied the information, detailed analyses of the mysterious technological improvements that had appeared throughout Kelsari territories, coupled with unusual energy signatures detected at the boundaries of their sensor networks. "I see evidence of human infiltration," he clicked dismissively. "Nothing our security forces cannot contain once properly directed." Tixviller's primary eyes narrowed. "And that is precisely why I requested this meeting. Strategist, your assessment fundamentally misunderstands what we're facing." She activated a hidden data node, revealing information not shared with the military command. "This is surveillance footage from 6 different Confederation worlds, taken over the past 2 standard cycles. The footage showed seemingly ordinary interactions, Kelsari citizens going about their daily activities, but highlighted in subtle enhancement were small objects, a trading vessel's unusual communication array, a civilian transport's modified navigation system, a cultural center's new atmospheric regulators. Each of these modifications appeared within our territory before we had any official contact with humans," Tixviller explained. "Each represents technology that enhances Kelsari life while gathering information. Most concerning, she magnified one section showing a military vessel in space dock. They've penetrated our defensive systems as well." Vos Tekmar's mandibles clicked rapidly in the pattern indicating agitation. "You suggest we've been compromised at every level. Impossible. Our technological superiority is precisely what blinds us," Tixviller interrupted. "We assumed superiority based on our assessment of their exploration vessel. That assumption prevented us from recognizing a fundamental truth about humans that my research now makes clear. They advance through adaptation rather than linear development." She displayed historical data from Earth's development, translated from information gathered through covert Kelsari observation posts. "Their technological evolution doesn't follow our patterns, where we perfect a technology before implementation. They deploy, observe failures, adapt, and redeploy continuously. Their greatest breakthroughs often come from combining disparate fields in ways our specialized development protocols would never consider." Vos Tekmar studied the data, his tactical mind processing implications. "Even if true, Admiral, their single warship cannot stand against our armada. Our numerical advantage is meaningless if we don't understand what we're fighting," Tixviller finished. "The UES consequence is not merely a vessel but a statement, a demonstration of philosophy through technology. Its design incorporates defensive capabilities that suggest humans value protection over destruction, adaptation over overwhelming force." She activated one final display, security footage from the recent diplomatic reception. The image zoomed in on Ambassador Chen, engaged in conversation with representatives from the Kelsari civilian sectors, agricultural coordinators, cultural preservationists, medical specialists, groups typically excluded from military discussions. While military command focuses on their warship, the ambassador builds relationships with our civilian infrastructure. She speaks their specialized dialects, references historical developments in their fields, demonstrates knowledge of their work that even our own leadership doesn't possess. Vos Tekmar's exoskeleton seemed to lose some of its luster as understanding dawned. A comprehensive approach to potential conflict. Military capability coupled with cultural intelligence and infrastructure integration. Precisely, Tixviller confirmed. They don't think in terms of vessels and weapons, but in systems and relationships. Their warning isn't the warship itself. It's the demonstration that they understand us as a complete civilization, while we've reduced them to a simple military calculation. She closed the displays and finally opened the viewport shields, revealing the homeworld below, and just visible at the edge of the orbital plane, the distinctive silhouette of the UES Consequence. The military command sees a single vessel. I see evidence of a species that studies before it acts, adapts rather than overwhelms, and values understanding as a strategic resource. That is why I requested this meeting. Strategist. Because the division within our leadership reflects a more fundamental question. What kind of civilization do we wish to be? Vos Tekmar moved to the viewport, his reflection overlaying the distant human ship. You believe their approach has merit. I believe, Tix Viller replied carefully, that a civilization capable of infiltrating our most secure systems while simultaneously improving our agricultural yields has demonstrated something our military expansion has cost us: the understanding that true strength comes from building rather than simply conquering. As they stood in contemplative silence, a subtle alert chimed. On Tix Viller's secure terminal, a message appeared. An invitation from Ambassador Chen for a private tour of human cultural archives, including recently recovered artifacts from the earliest days of Kelsari expansion. The timing was either coincidental or evidence of surveillance capabilities far beyond what even Tix Viller had suspected. War Commander Vos Tekmar stood in the command center of the Kelsari flagship Inevitable Dominance, his exoskeleton polished to ceremonial brilliance. The holographic tactical display showed his battle formation, 3 attack squadrons arranged in the traditional Kelsari spearhead configuration, each vessel's weapon systems synchronized for maximum impact. Final system checks complete, Commander, reported his second, Sub-Commander Nexteric. All vessels report optimal combat readiness. Vos Tekmar studied the distant image of the UES Consequence, maintaining its position at the edge of the Serenval system. For 3 cycles, the human vessel had remained there, neither advancing nor retreating, making no aggressive movements yet refusing to leave Confederation space. A High Council's hesitation damages our standing among the subject worlds. Vos Tekmar clicked to his command staff. This human vessel openly challenges our authority while their ambassador delays with endless diplomatic discussions. Today we demonstrate that the Kelsari Confederation responds decisively to trespassers. His tactical officer's mandibles twitched nervously. Commander, I must note for the official record that this operation proceeds without High Council authorization. Admiral Tix Viller specifically ordered. Admiral Tix Viller has been compromised by human diplomatic manipulation. Vos Tekmar interrupted sharply. The military command charter grants operational discretion when Confederation security is threatened. These coordinates, he indicated the human vessel's position, represent a direct challenge to our territorial sovereignty. The command staff exchanged uncertain glances, but continued preparation as ordered. Across 15 vessels, weapon systems powered to full capacity, while shield harmonics adjusted to expected human countermeasures based on limited intelligence from their first encounter. Battle formations confirmed, Sub-Commander Nexteric announced. Approach vector calculated to maximize coverage from all firing positions. Commence approach, Vos Tekmar ordered. Maintain communication silence. Execute precision strike pattern Dominance 7 upon achieving optimal firing range. The Kelsari vessels accelerated in perfect formation, their crystalline hulls refracting starlight as they approached the solitary human ship. On tactical displays, the UES Consequence appeared to make no defensive preparations, maintaining standard power distribution. Running lights still illuminated, no indication of weapons activation. The humans demonstrate either arrogance or foolishness, Vos Tekmar observed as they closed to attack range. Perhaps their previous encounter with our border forces was simply fortunate. Just as the Kelsari vessels entered optimal firing position, their communication systems activated autonomously. A transmission overrode their communication protocols, broadcasting simultaneously across all 15 vessels on command frequencies that should have been impenetrable. Kelsory vessels, this is Captain Elijah Jackson of the UES Consequence. Your approach formation and power signatures indicate hostile intent. This is your only warning. Vos Tekmar's exoskeleton plates clicked with anger. How dare they? Sir, interrupted the sensor officer, we're detecting unusual energy fluctuations throughout the human vessel. Their hull configuration appears to be changing. On the main view screen, the UES Consequence began a transformation unlike anything in Kelsory military experience. Its hull plates shifted position, revealing previously concealed structures that weren't weapon ports, but rather specialized energy redirection systems. The vessel's entire superstructure seemed to flow like liquid crystal, maintaining structural integrity while completely reconfiguring its defensive posture. Ignore their theatrics, Vos Tekmar commanded. Execute attack pattern now. The Kelsory vessels fired in perfect synchronization, multiple energy beams converging on the human ship from different vectors, a firing solution that would overwhelm any known defensive system through sheer concentrated power. What happened next would be studied in Kelsory military academies for generations. The Consequence's reconfigured hull didn't attempt to absorb or deflect the incoming fire. Instead, specialized panels activated at precisely calculated angles, creating a cascading energy reflection effect. Like light through a perfectly designed prism, each Kelsory weapon beam was captured, channeled through the hull's metamaterial surface, and redirected. Not toward space, not toward nearby celestial bodies, but with surgical precision back to each firing vessel's weapon emitters at exactly calibrated reduced power levels that overloaded targeting systems without breaching hulls. Throughout the Kelsory attack formation, vessels reported the same result. Weapons disabled, targeting systems offline, but structural integrity and life support untouched. Before Vos Tekmar could issue new orders, the sensor officer called out in alarm. Commander, small objects deploying from the human vessel, thousands of them, approaching at high velocity. The tactical display showed swarms of microscopic drones surrounding each Kelsory ship, moving in patterns too complex for tracking systems to predict. They didn't attack. Instead, they infiltrated through cooling vents, maintenance access ports, and external sensor arrays. Within moments, command interfaces throughout the Kelsory fleet displayed the same message in perfect military dialect script. Propulsion systems temporarily deactivated. Weapons systems temporarily deactivated. Life support operating at optimal levels. Please stand by for recovery instructions. On the Inevitable Dominance's main view screen, Captain Jackson's image appeared, his expression not triumphant but professionally neutral. War Commander Vos Tekmar, your vessels have been temporarily disabled using non-destructive methods. We will now demonstrate our commitment to preserving life even during conflict. The UES Consequence began moving through the disabled Kelsory formation, extending specialized tractor beams that stabilized each vessel's drift trajectory, preventing potential collisions as their momentum carried them through space. With each stabilization, detailed technical specifications were transmitted, precise instructions for safely restarting critical systems once the immediate confrontation concluded. Chief Engineer Lex Terrell's appendages trembled slightly as he extracted the device from beneath the primary navigation console of the Inevitable Dominance. No larger than a crystalline data shard, the object defied immediate classification, neither purely mechanical nor electronic, but something that incorporated elements of both alongside biological components. Analysis demanded Sub-Commander Nexveric, who had been tasked with overseeing the inspection after their vessel's humiliating return to Kelsory space. Unprecedented, Lex Terrell replied, placing the device in a containment field. Its design incorporates molecular-scale fabrication beyond our current manufacturing capabilities. The power source appears to derive energy from the ship's own electromagnetic field, completely undetectable by our standard security scans. Similar discoveries echoed across the fleet as engineering teams found identical devices integrated into critical systems throughout every vessel that had participated in the failed attack. More disturbing was the evidence that these devices hadn't been planted during the recent encounter. Material analysis and installation patterns suggested they had been present for at least 4 standard cycles. In the High Council's secure chamber, Admiral Tix Vaylor presented these findings to the assembled leadership. The room's traditional crystalline elegance felt suddenly fragile in light of the revelations. The devices appear designed not for destruction, but for selective system control, she explained, manipulating the holographic display to show their distribution throughout the fleet. They remained dormant until activated during the recent confrontation. Had the humans intended harm, these devices could have disabled life support rather than merely propulsion and weapons. War Commander Vos Tekmar, his once gleaming exoskeleton now dulled by the chemicals used during the security decontamination process, clicked his mandibles in defensive posturing. This merely confirms the threat they pose. We must mobilize the full Confederation fleet before they can deploy more of these infiltration devices. Science Director Nexbala, whose analytical mind had earned her respect even among the military leadership, raised her primary appendages for attention. Commander, you misinterpret the evidence. These devices were placed months before we had any official contact with humans. The infiltration already occurred and went completely undetected despite our supposedly superior security protocols. High Chancellor Zorbex turned his sensory array toward the diplomatic liaison. What of Ambassador Chen? Has she offered explanation for this intrusion? Before the liaison could respond, the chamber's communication system activated, displaying Ambassador Chen's image on the central projection. The timing suggested either monitoring capabilities within the supposedly secure chamber or predictive modeling of Kelsari response patterns so accurate it bordered on prescience. Honorable representatives of the Kelsari Confederation, Chen began, her perfect command of formal dialect even more unsettling in light of recent discoveries. I understand you found our observation modules. They were placed not as weapons but as safeguards, to ensure we understood your capabilities before establishing formal diplomatic relations. Admiral Tix Vaylor's appendages twitched with realization. You're monitoring this session. Chen's expression remained diplomatic but firm. Just as you monitored our colonies through the observation posts established in the Proxima and Ta Ceti systems, posts we allowed to remain operational so you could form your own assessment of humanity. The chamber erupted in clicking consternation as this information circulated. The Kelsari leadership had believed their observation efforts completely covered. To demonstrate our commitment to transparent relations moving forward, Chen continued, I'm transmitting data you should find illuminating. The chamber's displays filled with information. Detailed records of diplomatic communications between humans and 12 other species in the sector, including 4 the Kelsari had classified as pre-spaceflight civilizations based on their lack of traditional propulsion signatures. These civilizations developed along different technological paths than the Kelsari standard model, Chen explained. Some prioritized biological integration over mechanical systems. Others developed quantum communication methods that don't require conventional transmission signatures. Each represents a unique evolutionary and cultural pathway, diversity that strengthens the entire sector. The displays shifted to show something that silenced even the most agitated representatives. Detailed scans of Kelsari ceremonial artifacts long believed destroyed during ancient conflicts. The resonance crystal of the First Harmony, the navigation prism of explorer Tex Marin, the original constitutional lattice containing the founding principles of the Confederation before military expansion became its primary directive. We recovered these items from abandoned battlefields and derelict stations throughout the sector, Chen explained, her voice softening. Our archaeological teams preserved them according to Kelsari cultural protocols, recognizing their significance not just as historical objects, but as embodiments of principles your civilization was founded upon. The images focused on the constitutional lattice, its crystalline structure encoding philosophical concepts that predated the Confederation's military dominance. Principles of cooperative development, knowledge exchange, and mutual advancement that had been gradually overwritten by expansionist policies. We studied these artifacts not to weaponize your history, Chen continued, but to understand who the Kelsari were before military conquest became your defining characteristic. We found a civilization of remarkable artistic achievement, philosophical sophistication, and collaborative potential, qualities still present within your society, though increasingly overshadowed. The chamber remained silent as the Kelsari leadership confronted not just the extent of human infiltration, but the mirror it held to their own civilizational trajectory. How far they had drifted from their founding principles, how completely they had succumbed to the very dominance hierarchies their ancestors had sought to transcend. The joint colony world of Harmony Point gleamed under the light of its twin suns, its architecture a striking blend of human and Kelsari design principles. Crystal spires reminiscent of Kelsari home structures rose alongside curved earthen buildings inspired by human sustainable architecture, each complementing rather than competing with the other. Admiral Tix Villar, now serving as diplomatic overseer for Confederation human relations, walked along the settlement's central plaza alongside Captain Jackson. They made an unusual pair, her crystalline exoskeleton catching the sunlight, while his uniform bore the now familiar insignia of the UES Consequence, the vessel that had changed everything 6 months earlier. The environmental harmonizers exceed all projected efficiency metrics, Tix Veller noted, gesturing toward the atmospheric regulation towers that maintained comfortable conditions for both species. Our engineers would never have considered incorporating photosynthetic elements into atmospheric processing, and our designers wouldn't have thought to use crystalline resonance fields to distribute the processing load, Jackson replied. That's the point of this colony, demonstrating what becomes possible when different evolutionary pathways combine their insights. They paused at the edge of the educational complex where the colony's first generation of children interacted. Human children with their quick, fluid movements played alongside Kelsari hatchlings, whose deliberate, precise manipulations of building materials created structures neither species would have designed independently. They don't see differences as threats, Tix Villar observed, her voice carrying the harmonic undertones indicating contemplative mood. They see them as opportunities for discovery. Jackson nodded. That's always been humanity's greatest strength, though we often forgot it ourselves. Our adaptability comes from embracing diverse perspectives rather than enforcing conformity. Above them, a mixed patrol of vessels maintained vigilant watch over the colony, Kelsari crystalline ships with their geometric precision flying alongside the more organic curves of human vessels. Their integrated sensor networks provided coverage far more comprehensive than either fleet could achieve independently. The Vrax incursion at the Cygnus boundary was repelled with minimal casualties, Tix Villar noted. Their hive mind attack strategies proved ineffective against our combined defense protocols. Our tactical predictability combined with your firepower concentration made the difference, Jackson agreed. They expected either human adaptability or Kelsari overwhelming force, not both simultaneously. They continued toward the colony's research center, where the day's true ceremony would take place. 6 months of collaboration had yielded something unprecedented, technology that neither civilization could have developed alone. The research center's atrium had been transformed for the occasion. Representatives from 14 species gathered beneath the transparent dome, their diverse physiologies accommodated by environmental microfields. At the center stood a device unlike anything seen before in the sector, the Mutual Understanding Matrix, a communication technology that transcended conventional language barriers. Ambassador Chen, now serving as Earth's sector representative, approached the podium alongside High Chancellor Zorbex, whose earlier militarism had been replaced by measured diplomacy. Distinguished representatives, Chen began, today marks not just a technological achievement, but a philosophical one. The matrix before you represents the first true multi-species collaborative development in our sector's history. Chancellor Zorbex continued seamlessly. This technology enables cross-species communication at the conceptual level rather than merely translating words. It represents the principle that understanding transcends mere information exchange. The ceremony proceeded with representatives from each species adding component activators to the matrix, each piece designed by a different civilization, yet functioning in perfect harmony when combined. As the final connection engaged, the matrix illuminated, projecting not mere holographic images, but conceptual fields that allowed each species to perceive the same fundamental ideas through their unique sensory systems. For the gathered representatives, the experience transcended traditional diplomacy. Species with vastly different sensory apparatus and cognitive frameworks shared understanding directly, perceiving concepts like cooperation, mutual development, and peaceful coexistence through their own biological and cultural lenses while maintaining the shared essence. As the demonstration concluded, Admiral Tixviller and Captain Jackson stepped away from the excited discussions that followed, finding a quiet observation balcony overlooking the colony. When your exploration vessel first appeared at our border, Tixviller reflected, our warning systems categorized it as a war vessel simply because it was unknown. Our fear interpreted difference as threat. Jackson smiled slightly. And yet that misunderstanding led here to collaboration that makes both our civilizations stronger than either could be alone. The sun began to set, activating the colony's unique illumination system. Crystal structures infused with bioluminescent compounds developed through joint research. The light cast patterns that were aesthetically pleasing to both human and Kelsuri visual processing, symbolizing their newfound ability to create beauty that transcended biological differences. The next generation will take this further than we can imagine, Tixviller said, watching the children still playing in the distance. They won't remember when we were adversaries. But they should remember how we became allies, Jackson replied. That transformation, from seeing difference as threat to recognizing it as strength, that's the lesson worth preserving. As twilight deepened, the colony's residents gathered in the central plaza for the evening meal, a community ritual that incorporated elements from multiple cultures. At one table, a human xenobiologist listened intently as a Kelsuri cultural preservationist explained the significance of their ancestral constitutional lattice, now displayed prominently in the colony's historical center. At another, engineering teams from both species debated modifications to the atmospheric harmonizers, each building upon the other's insights. Above them all, displayed on an archway spanning the plaza's entrance, the colony's founding principle was inscribed in multiple languages and symbolic systems, though its meaning required no translation. Understanding transformed strangers into allies, and differences into strength. The once ominous warning, human war vessel spotted on the horizon, had become instead an arrival of unexpected allies, bringing not conquest, but collaboration, not dominance but diversity, not subjugation but synthesis. The horizon, once a boundary to be defended, had become instead the shared frontier of possibility that all species could explore together.